right, so obviously now we're getting into some defensive reactions. Just defense from turtle position is a whole other instructional in itself. I just want to run through some of the most common defensive reactions and give you guys a little bit of insight on what we should be doing. In general, when my partner's in a turtle position and she wants to roll over the near shoulder, she has to have some kind of control of my outside hand. If my hands are locked around my partner in a backhanded arm, for example, or figure four backhanded arm, and she goes to roll over the near shoulder, she just falls into my lap. The only time it's really appropriate for my partner to shoulder roll over the near shoulder is when she controls my hand in some way. So if she's behind me and I control her hand, now it's appropriate for me to come through. And now when she goes to follow me, because I control this wrist, as she goes to get a head position or control my upper body, I can pretty easily roll through and enter into my partner's legs, or just simply go in and regard. Okay? So just know that if you have any kind of good control of your partner's upper body with robust backhanded arm grips or claw grips, and your partner rolls over the near shoulder, it's going to be pretty easy for you to take their back. If I get to a full claw, for example, and I'm controlling my partner's hip or a far wrist, if your partner tries to shoulder roll over the near shoulder, they basically just fall into your lap. Okay, this is good for you. Let's look at when our partner goes to shoulder roll over the near shoulder, and you don't have robust grips, and you're just trying initially to control your partner, and she immediately goes into a roll. Anytime my partner goes into a near shoulder roll, I have to make sure that I keep a wedge on top of my partner's hips. If at any point my partner goes to roll and I don't follow her, she's immediately going to take her hips out and around and she's going to be free. So some of the common reactions are my partner grabs a hand, shoves it down, and now as she goes to roll, you try to stay with the tight waist. So now as she goes to continue to roll, we get into a position where I can block my partner's hips. Now if I can block my partner's hips sufficiently, I can push her back in this direction and either pin her, or she moves back to a turtle position. And now as she does that, I put my hook in place. Okay? Or as she goes to roll, I can start pinning legs and going into passes right from here. The issue is anybody good is going to go into a shoulder roll, and this is what's going to happen. She's going to come behind me. I'm going to go to shoulder roll. As she goes to take a tight waist on me to pin my hips, I'm immediately going to start monitoring my partner's hand on my tight waist. So I'm either going to, one, physically grab her four fingers over the knuckle line and strip the grip off, take your leg off. So now as she goes to control a tight waist, I physically strip the grip off. Or if I can't access the hand for whatever reason, as I go to roll through, I post my partner's elbow, and when she goes to hold on tight, I V-grip the elbow, and now my hips slide through. And once my hips are on the ground, now I'm in a real precarious situation. So as I'm going to roll through, my partner goes to control a tight waist on me, and the second I get to hit a roll, I immediately get my hips down to the floor, and now you're out. So yes, there are follow-ups when your partner goes to roll through, but the best way is just to immediately follow your partner through. All right? If you're not going to follow your partner through and you're going to try to pin them, let's say you are late on your partner and you can't follow them through, then we'll look at some ways to deal with that. But for now, we're going to go into early attacks where we can manage to follow our partner as she goes to roll. The hardest time to follow our partner over a near shoulder roll is when we have little control over our partner's upper body. If we have any strong upper body grips, the rear body lock, or a backhanded arm, or any kind of claw gripping from here, it's pretty easy to follow your partner. The second she goes to roll, once again, I just slide my knee up, and she just falls into my lap, essentially. Okay. The biggest issue comes from when she grabs my wrist, right? I have control over either my partner's far wrist or my partner's far hip. Where now, as she goes to roll, you end up trying to follow her, and you try to hold on, and hips come out. So what I want to do instead is I want to go with the roll. So as my partner grabs my wrist and goes to hit a forward roll, I'm going to bring my head down to the floor right next to my partner's, and I'm going to control my partner's hip with my opposite hand. So as she goes to roll, I make sure that her hips never get higher than mine. If her hips get higher than mine, she can hop across into side control. Nope, other way. As she goes to roll, she can hop across and end up on top of me if her hips come higher than mine. Or I can just completely lose connection to her, where we both try to roll. If her hips just move out and away from mine, and I go to follow her, you can end up something like that, where you just lose control of your partner completely. The worst case scenario is as she goes to hit a roll out, she goes to roll initially, and as she goes to follow me, my hips stay higher than hers. She goes to follow me, and you end up pinned, and you're close to your partner's back, and now you're in bottom side control. That's no good. So what we want to do is always make sure that our hips are staying higher than our partner's hips by putting a wedge on top of them. So as she goes to grab my hand, and she starts to roll out, I put my head right next to hers. The further her head gets away from mine, the less chance I'm going to have of exposing her back. If she goes to roll through and her head's far away from mine, go ahead, I'm never going to be able to follow her. So the first thing is to get ear to ear. So the second she grabs my hand, we come in, we go ear to ear, so that as she goes to roll near shoulder, I'm in good head position. And now as she goes to take her hips high, I pull her hips down towards my hips. Now I have a wedge outside of my partner's hips with my two knees. And now as she continues to roll, the momentum takes us through, and this gives me an opportunity now to lock a backhand and arm. Now, because I have two wedges outside of my partner's knees when she goes to move around, it's pretty easy now to insert at least one hook, and then eventually work your way into working two hooks into place and going in for winning positions. What this will look like in a live situation is she goes to roll, she has to release your hand at some point. If I go to roll through defensively, if I shove her hand down, as I go to roll, I have to eventually release the hand to re-guard. It's as she releases the hand that I start to go into locking my upper body grips. So she holds on. As she goes to roll, I match head position. Now, as she goes to start rolling through, I extend my arm away to help her, to make her release the grip. So that as she's letting go, my arm's coming out and away from her. I pull her hips down, and we end up in a position where both belly up, center line's aligned, and now I have two knees on either side of my partner's hips. So when she goes to move out and away from me, I can lock a backhand and arm, and now I can look to insert hooks in various ways and get into winning positions. So the most dangerous time for your partner to shoulder roll over the near shoulder is when you have little control over your partner's upper body. If you have good control over your partner's upper body, with any strong connection, and your partner goes to roll, you can easily take your partner's back. With a backhand and arm, it's even the easiest. She just basically slides into a seated head and arm or into a full back take. But when I only have control of my partner's far wrist and far hip, and she grabs a hold of my hand, so now I can't lock a backhand and arm, when she goes to roll, I need to focus on two things. Getting my head next to hers on the near side, and getting my hips higher than hers. So as she goes to roll, I dive my head through. She goes to continue to roll. I pull her hips down into my hips, and I put two wedges outside of her hips with my knees. Now the upper body comes into place. I can sit my partner forward, or if the hips stay up, I can go in and lock my feet into position. So what this will always look like is we're in here, I'm playing. Before I can get any upper body grips, she immediately chooses to go in and roll. As she goes to roll, I extend my hand back to assist her with the letting go of my hand. She has to let go eventually, but I can make her let go a little bit sooner. So as she goes to roll, we put two wedges outside of our partner's hips, and now we're ready to go, and either with double unders or a backhand and arm, and now we're ready to go. So one more time, full speed. I get to a turtle position on her partner. Before I can do anything, before I can knock her over or off balance her, she immediately either grabs my wrist or doesn't. If she doesn't grab my wrist and she goes to roll over her shoulder, I just lock a backhand and arm right away, and she falls into my lap. So it's in her best interest to control my wrist first. And now as she goes to roll, I put a wedge outside the hips. Now, when she goes to move her hips out and away from me, my two knees wedge her hips in place, and that gives me more than enough time to transition into hooks or body triangle, okay? So in general, your partner should only, an intelligent partner, will only be shoulder rolling over the near shoulder when you don't have robust upper body grips. If you have tight upper body grips set in place with claw grips or good control of the wrist or back head and arm especially, your partner shouldn't be rolling over the near shoulder. They should only be rolling over the near shoulder when you don't have control of the upper body and they have a post and they have some kind of upper body grip on you where they can create separation of your two heads. What she needs to roll over the near shoulder is distance between her head and my head. The further the distance is, the greater her chance of escape. The closer the distance, the greater chance I have of taking her back. My head's close to her the whole time. The only way to create distance between the two heads is for me to not have upper body grips. If I have strong upper body grips, now I can glue myself to her. So if she tries to roll over the shoulder now, she just falls into my lap. If she tries to roll over the shoulder now, she just falls into my lap. With any strong upper body grips, she'll always just fall into your lap if she rolls over the shoulder. But if she can create separation between my head and her head, now as she goes to roll, the separation is what gets her free. But if I can stay close through following her head with my head, because there's no connection of our two bodies. So I can't just glue myself to her. I have to physically think about following her head position with my head position. So that as she goes to roll, I match her head movement. And now as she goes to roll, my head stays close to hers the entire time. And that puts me in a position where now I can follow her and take her back. So your partner's shoulder rolls near shoulder when she can do a couple of things. Stop you from preventing a strong connection of your upper body to her upper body and create distance between your head and her head. If she can't do those two things, she shouldn't be rolling over the near shoulder. She should be going into one of the three other escapes. So we covered our partner rolling over the near shoulder to recover to guard. Now we're going to look at our opponent rolling over the far shoulder with some kind of maki-komi roll. When our partner rolls over the far shoulder, typically your partner, just so you guys have an idea of what to do escapes-wise, if you have, as we spoke about, no connection to your upper body or a poor connection to your partner's upper body, they want to go into a roll over the near shoulder. But if you have a strong connection of your partner's upper body with strong wrist grips or back head and arm, rolling over the far shoulder with maki-komi rolls are usually a much better option. Now, when your partner goes to roll over the far side with the maki-komi roll, she can do this in two ways. One, with the leg not being trapped, or two, with my leg being trapped. Okay, so let's move this way a little bit. Roll to the wall. What we're always looking to do is access our partner's far wrist initially. Okay, so we're always going to look to either knock our partner down, put our first hook in, or if our partner's playing an open turtle, then I go into the far wrist. What I want is to either, one, force my partner down to a hip if she has closed elbows, or now she has to move back to a turtle position where I can insert my hook, or two, force her to open her elbows and then immediately go into the far wrist. Okay, so I have some kind of connection. Once I get to the far wrist, if my partner chooses to roll through, whether I have a back head and arm or just a far wrist grip, the back take is going to be essentially the same as when we had our first hook in. Okay, if you recall, rolling in the series, our partner went to roll through, we went to cover, and now we have our partner's back. It's very similar, but we don't have a hook in this time. So when our partner goes to roll through, I have to make sure that my hips are higher than my partner's. If my hips are lower than my partner's and she goes to roll through, now you'll always end up in bottom position, or best case scenario, losing your partner's back. So I have to make sure that my hips stay on top of my partner's. So as my partner goes to roll through, I glide over my partner's hips, and again, I beat my partner at the head and shoulders and the hips. So as she goes to sit to guard, I put a wedge between her leg and the floor with my leg. So as she goes, like so, and I keep my head nice and close to my partner, and now we fall across. Now this time, instead of falling across to the hip, we can choose to stay seated because I have no hooks in at the time. If we fall across to the far hip, I'm always looking to insert my bottom hook first. So as we roll across, my bottom hook comes in, and now we can body triangle top side. if for whatever reason you feel like you get to a backhanded arm and you fall through and you don't have any hooks in, because we didn't start with an initial hook now. If you feel like you don't have any ability to put your bottom hook in as you roll through, we have a couple of good options. One is to take our top hook and come across with a strong top hook with a long hook. So when our partner goes to scoot out, their hips out and away from us, they can create a strong back heel with our top leg. And now when she goes to move out and around, I pull my hips forward and I pull my bottom leg through. And now we can take 2 hooks in place, or like a body triangle top side, whatever you feel comfortable with. If you feel like your partner absolutely just gets their hips out and away before you can do anything, now I have to focus on trying to sit my partner up. The big issue that people make is their head comes far away from their partner and the head slips inside, the head comes down to the floor, and now the elbow comes out, and now your partner's free. What I have to do is I have to keep my head close to my partner's, and I have to start to move our bodies into one straight line so we're parallel to each other. If I'm, say, perpendicular to my partner, it's very easy for my partner to start to walk the head out and away, and then the head will come into the space between my head and my elbow. So what I have to start doing is walking my hips up towards my partner's head, like so. So now my partner goes to bring her head down to the floor. She can't. In order for her to escape, she has to free the head first. The head comes out, down to the floor. Then the elbow slips inside my elbow, and then once the elbow's free, she's gone. So what I have to make sure from this position is that I move parallel to my partner. Now, as she goes to move away from me, because I changed my body position, it's impossible. She can't bring the head down to the floor now. Now I bring my 2 knees and 2 elbows together. I can go 2 at a time, or I can go 1 and then the other. I prefer just bringing 2 elbows in, and 2 knees in, and now I suck my partner into me. You can either, 1, choose to come forward and sit your partner up, or you can just pull your partner up into a seated position. Both are very good. Scoot back down. If you're dealing with someone very big and much heavier than you, it's probably better to start crunching their chin forward and sitting them into a seated position. Now, because I have good head position and good control of my 2 arms, and I control my partner's upper body, when she tries to fall to either side, I have very good control from here. And now I just look to build up and walk to either side to insert a hook. And once I insert a hook, I can sit back down, fall across to the bottom hook side, and then insert my legs. So if I feel my partner goes to roll through with a maki komi, but doesn't have my leg trapped, what I want, best case scenario, is to insert my hook as we're rolling. So I get to either a far wrist, get to a backhanded arm, doesn't make a difference. As she goes to roll through, as long as I have this far wrist, I can follow her. So the principles with the initial follow remain the same. My head stays close to hers. I cover at the head and shoulders by beating her head position with my head, and I beat her hip position with my leg. So as she goes to sit, we end up here. Now, if we end up with our 2 butts on the floor, that's fine. I lock a backhanded arm, and I look to insert my weightless feet from a seated position. If I see that momentum carries us through, and I can insert a bottom hook, then that's perfect. And I can lock 2 hooks in, or body triangle top side. But the issue starts to come in, starts to run into issues, when you roll all the way through, but you don't have a hook inserted. So as your partner goes to roll through, you end up here. And now you don't have a bottom hook and don't have a top hook. Whenever I see this, 2 good options. 1, I go long hook with the top leg. So now my partner tries to scoot over my bottom hook. She can't. As she goes to scoot over, she always has to raise her hips to some degree. Okay, so if her hips are down, she physically can't walk over my bottom leg. As she goes to walk over the bottom leg, this always gives you space to free your bottom hook, and then we make a transition where we go long hook with the top leg to long hook with the bottom leg, and now she has no ability to step over your bottom hook, and we can lock in our body triangle or 2 hooks in. If you find your partner walking over your bottom leg and you can't get a long hook in, you feel like you absolutely are losing your partner, Then from here, I always look to make sure that I initially am starting perpendicular and then moving parallel. Okay, come back. So I feel like I absolutely can insert a long hook over my partner's hips or some kind of hook on my partner's top leg. You can also use a hook where I look to start to pull my partner on top of me, like so. You can go in here and start to attack your partner's back. But if I feel like I absolutely can't control my partner's hips in any way, and she goes to move away, then I have to focus on upper body control with my head position. I come in ear to ear. Now I take my feet and I walk my hips back and around parallel like so. Now I take 2 knees in, and I sit my partner up. Once I sit my partner up, I come into a low squat where she goes to move, and I can easily control my partner. Now I raise my hips, but I keep my head position in. If I raise my hips, my head comes up, she just falls back, and the head comes out, and now you lost your partner completely. So my hips rise, but my head stays low. When she goes to move, I control the head and the shoulders very well. Now you can pick a side. Walk to a side, insert a hook, and I squat straight down, and I simply fall to the bottom hook side. And now we're in that same exact position we were in before when we first started with inserting hooks and going in. Okay. So the main issue comes, once again, from when you roll your partner rolls through and you can't insert a hook and you lose your partner's hips completely. If we can insert a bottom hook, that's great. But if we can't, as she goes to roll through, we lose our partner's hips. We look to go initially long hook with the top leg. So that when she goes to bring her hips out and over, I back heel with the top leg, and I bring my bottom leg through. If you feel like you can't get a long hook, we can go in and use a back heel on your partner's top leg with your top leg. So that when she goes to scoot her hips out, we can look to point our 2 knees towards the ceiling and get a wedge underneath our partner's hips, like so. We have our left leg in this case is outside of our partner's hips, so when she goes to scoot the hips out and over, it's difficult. Now we can throw our hook in. Or if we lose our partner's hips completely and we feel like we absolutely can't get a long hook across our partner's hips or a short hook in between our partner's legs where we can start to dig underneath our partner's hips like so, then we have to start to focus on the upper body. So as she goes to move out and away from us, what she wants is to move parallel or perpendicular to me to scoot her head in the space between my elbow and my head, and now she's free, the elbow comes free, and now she's out. So I have to glue my ear to my partner's ear. So when she goes to do that, when she goes to go out and escape, it's very difficult, and I can walk my feet into a position where my body's parallel to hers. Now I bring 2 knees in, and I sit my partner up. Now I go 1 leg, 2 legs, and we're in a low squat. Now I stand. As my hips rise, my head stays in position. I walk, and we sit. And now from here, we can easily insert our hooks. Okay? So the back take remains relatively the same, unless you lose your partner's hips in the transition, and you have to focus on controlling the upper body to go into a follow-up back take. Now we're going to look at countering a Makikomi roll when our partner actually trapped the leg. Now this is a real issue. When my partner, normally from a backhanded arm, goes into a Makikomi roll, she takes the defensive hands in place, she bumps me forward, and now she walks her hips away so that she can get her leg higher than my leg, trap my ankle, and now her hips are higher than mine. So what will happen is I want to keep my hips higher than hers. The issue is, as she bumps me forward, it puts me off balance, and now as she walks away, she can start to get the hip height advantage, and now she can trap my leg. Now my partner traps my leg, now I'm in a real danger of her escaping. As she looks to hook my arm and roll through, as she goes to roll through, first of all, you have to make sure that you go with the roll. What you don't want, it feels instinctually like your face is going to get smashed into the ground. So what a lot of people's reactions are is as they see the floor coming towards their head, they try to posture up and get away from the floor. The further your head moves away from your partner's head, the harder your face is going to smash into the ground. Okay, so just know that. And when she goes to roll, if I posture up and I'm like, oh shit, I don't want to fall, as she goes to roll, you're never going to be able to base. Because as your hand posts, when she goes to roll through, your hand can only post so far. But as she goes to roll, you come over that post, and now your hand, you can't repost because there's weight over your hand. So you're trying to posture up and your head's trying to get away, but as she goes to roll, your head smashes into the floor, and now you get rolled through after you almost break your neck, and you feel like a complete idiot because your partner almost paralyzed you and escaped the position. So make sure that as your partner goes to roll, you get away from the habit of posting on the floor. The second she goes to roll, no matter how far I post out, go ahead. As she goes to roll, I'm always going to come over that post. My head's going to bang into the floor. So get in the habit of following your partner's head with your head. If I tuck my head, it makes everything much easier. So as my partner goes to roll on through, instead of posting, I'm going to tuck my head in so I can follow her with the roll through. So as she goes, we go through. Now, from this position, if my partner can get her left elbow, in this case, the inside elbow, down to the floor, she's basically escaped the position. Okay, so this is no good for me. Now all she has to do is free this hand. Once the far hand is free, she turns on top, and now she's gone. Now there are many things that I can do with entering into my partner's legs and going into attacks from here, but what I want is to get my partner's back. So that's instructional specifically. So we're going to look at how we can recover and take our partners back from here. Again, we have to emphasize head position. If our head position is off, we're going to lose everything from here. So the second my partner rolls through, she'll always be able to get her elbow down to the floor. Right? That's a given. But initially, what I want is to take my head across and underneath my partner's head on the far side, so I can lock my hands up nice and tight. Now my partner brings her elbow to the floor. There's no danger of a strangle anymore, but I still have control of my partner's upper body. I don't have really control of my partner's lower body, and my body's not in a position to actually go in and trap her legs, or to trap her hips with hooks. So as she's holding onto my legs, like so, I'm going to look to free my leg. I do this by taking my outside leg, my free foot, and posting on my partner's leg. What I'm looking to do is to bring my right knee, in this case, to the inside hip, down to the floor. If my knee stays on top of her hips, I'll never be able to free my leg. So what I want is to move my hips away, and I want to open my partner's inside knee down to the floor. If her knee stays pointing towards the ceiling, and I try to take my knee out to the floor, it'll never be able to do it. So I can't just push on my partner's leg. If I push and I free my knee, it only comes up to the chest so far, but I can't get my ankle out. So the only way to free my leg is to put my knee on the ground. I do this by posting on my partner's leg by the long end of the lever up by the knee, and by opening my partner's knee down towards the floor so I can move my hips away and bring my knee down to the ground. Once my knee moves down to the ground, now I can start to extract my leg. I move to a backhand arm, and I keep good head position, and I start to walk my hips away from my partner's. When she goes to hold on tight to my leg, I push on my partner's top leg to free just my heel. So she holds on tight. I free my heel at the top leg, and then I free the rest of my foot at the bottom leg. Now my legs are free. Now, again, I need a good head position. If my head position's wrong and I try to come up perpendicular, my partner will always walk her hips to her right and slide her head free. So I have to make sure that I stay ear to ear and chin to trap, and I walk myself parallel to my partner. So that as she goes to try to escape now, I change the angle. Now when she goes to walk her head out, because the angle of our bodies are different, it's very difficult for her to escape her head. And now again, I take 2 knees into my chest. I walk my partner forward. Now we're in the same position where we're ready to stand up into a low squat, raising the hips but keeping the head low. Walking, stepping. Now we're ready to take our partners back once again. So this time, we're in a real predicament. Our partner's about to escape. She makikomi rolls me, and she also keeps my wrist trapped. This is no good. So I have a backhand arm, for example. Again, if I go backhand arm, she can't go near side shoulder, so she has to go far side shoulder. So again, based upon my grips, I know exactly what path of action my partner has to take, or what an intelligent opponent should do. And if she's naive and unintelligent, and she does the wrong thing, like rolling over the near shoulder, then she gives me an easy back take. So it goes right back to the beginning where we have a path of known reactions where we know exactly what our partner has to do, contingent upon what grips we have. All right. So my partner has defensive hands in most of the time. I have a backhand arm. She bumps me forward. She goes to step around, and she traps my ankle, and now she's getting ready to roll us through. Now, as she goes to roll us through, I make sure I don't get into the habit of posting my hand and smash my head into the ground. I go with the roll by tucking my head in, so that as she goes to roll me through, we end up here. Now, the first thing I have to do is I have to beat her head position. If she can bring her elbow to the floor, and now she frees this wrist, now you're losing every time. So I make sure that my head comes to the far side, and I glue my ear to her ear. I focus on locking a figure four backhand arm, because she has defensive hands in place most of the time. I strip my partner's grip, and move to a backhand arm like so. Now when she goes to free the head's trapped, and I have had some time to be able to free my leg. To free my leg, my partner's trapping nice and tight. If I just try to pull my leg straight up, it always gets caught to some degree in my partner's chest, and he'll never be able to free it. The key to being able to free my trapped leg is to put my knee on the ground. And the only way to do that is to get my partner's knees pointing towards me. If her knees point straight up to the ceiling, you'll never be able to free your knee. So I take a post inside and on top of my partner's leg. I push her knee down towards the floor. As I do that, I can always slide my knee now down and out. Now when she has to hold on tight to my leg, she can't return it to the middle of her body and align it with her center line because my knee is wedged into her hip. When she tries to pull my knee back to where it was, that's not an easy task. Now I free my heel by pushing on my partner's top leg. She goes to hold on tight as she can. I go top leg, and I free my heel. Now I go bottom leg, and I free the rest of my foot. And now I have to focus on moving the upper body. If I stay perpendicular, she walks her feet to the right, and the head slides out every time. I end up with Kimura. So I make sure that as she goes to walk away from me, I align our bodies into one straight line. Now, when she goes to walk her head out and away, it's almost impossible. Now I take my knees in. I sit my partner up. Now, once again, we're in position to raise our hips while keeping good head position. We can pick a side, 1 or 2. Now we're ready to go in and take our partners back. Okay? So when our partner hits a Makikomi roll with the ankle trapped, you have to first control a partner's head and shoulders. If your partner's head and elbows come out and the upper body's lost, you're going to lose the position completely. It's time to transition into attacks on your partner's Kimura, partner's arms with Kimura, or move to your partner's legs, or just do something else. Second is to be able to free your knee from within your partner's legs by putting your knee on the floor and then freeing your ankle and foot. And then maintaining good head position to be able to sit your partner up so they can't free the head and the elbow. And then eventually sitting them back up and going into a secondary back attack. Okay. Now, there are much more options. You can get into rabbit holes here where you're 15, 20 transitions deep and no one's won the battle yet. But that's a whole different instruction on what we're talking about. Escapes from Turtle and what our responsibilities are from being able to escape bottom turtle position. We're going to go into defending my opponent trying to stand up on us. Right now, we've covered inside and outside leg stand-ups when we're behind our partner. But when we're on the side of our partner, we don't have the ability to run to either side quickly to be able to counter our partner standing up. So let's look at how we're going to counter inside and outside leg stand-ups when we're on our partner's side. If we're behind our partner and our partner tries to stand up hips first into a 4-point, then we just go into the lock hand spiral rod and we set our partner down just like before. But if our partner tries to go into an outside leg stand-up, there are some key things I have to look at here. What are my partner's hands doing? If she takes a big base outside. If my partner goes to naively stand up, and she goes to hit an outside leg stand-up, and there's a big opening between my partner's elbow and my partner's knee, there's no reason why, as she goes to get up, I can't just insert my first hook and play from here. Now, the second she goes to start getting up, we just move right into a power half Nelson. So if my partner's naive, and she goes to stand up with an inside leg stand-up, and it just looks like, or an outside leg stand-up, and it looks like this, just insert your first hook. So if we're in a turtle position, and our partner goes to get up, and she steps that outside leg up, and there's a big gap here, I just raise my hips with my partner's. When I feel her hips rising, I don't leave my hips down. I make sure that as she goes to get up, I don't do this. As she goes to raise, I come up with her. Now if there's a big space between the elbow and the knee, as she goes to continue to rise, I immediately insert my hook. Now, it feels like you're going to fall off. When I go to put a power half in, it feels like because her leg's up, I feel like I'm going to fall off my partner's body. Make sure that when you go to insert a power half, you can't get to your partner's far wrist. That's why you feel like if you try to unlock or take your post hand off, you're going to fall down to your hip. Just put tension under your partner's far armpit with your far hand, my right hand in this case. Here, really. So I put initial tension that locks me into the shoulder. So now, if I just take my hand off and there's no tension, I always fall, and you're relying on speed to lock your hands. Whereas when you glue your front of your shoulder to the back of your partner's shoulder by putting tension underneath your partner's armpit, now, when you take your post hand off, you hang on your partner. If she tries to shake you off from here, you don't fall. But when there's no tension, you always fall off. So you put initial tension underneath your partner's armpit, and now we lock a power half. Now when she goes to get up, we can always keep posture broken and break our partner down to a hip and switch back to all of our attacks down on the ground. So that's if you see your partner using an outside leg stand-up when there's space between you and your partner. She goes to stand up, I raise my hips with her. I never keep my hips lower than hers. I come forwards, I create a weightless leg, and I insert a hook. Now I put tension running through the far shoulder so I can hang off my partner, lock a power half, and then break our partner down. Now if our partner's smart, you're gonna see stuff like this. When she goes to stand up outside leg, and she keeps her elbow and her knee connected. So you'll find yourself in positions where your partner goes to stand up with an outside leg stand up, and the hand's in here. So now, when she goes to insert a hook, as she goes to rise with her hips, it takes the pressure off me, and now I can stand up and get away. Whenever you see this, the responsibility is on you to make sure that you knock your partner down and hit an initial kazushi to force her to post on the hand, okay? If she goes to stand up with an outside leg stand up, and she keeps her elbow and knee connected, now I start by, again, trying to knock my partner down to an unathletic position. Whereas the second she goes to stand up, instead of trying to insert my hook, I just immediately knock her down to a hip. Now because she's on the hip, when she goes to re-turtle, she scissors the legs, and I bring my first hook in, and now we're back to square one, and we just reboot the system. The only way that my partner can not get taken over to a hip is to open up the turtle on this side, because essentially right now, she's closing the turtle with a strong knee to elbow connection. When she goes to step that outside leg up, now, as she goes to get up, I have to pull towards me to threaten her knocking down to a hip. When she feels this, she has no choice but to take a left hand and post out wide to stop herself. And now she opens the turtle, and my hook comes in. And now when she goes to get up, I put tension through the shoulder, and we lock a power half, and we're ready to go. So we hit initial kazushis, initial off balances, and we incrementally work our partner down to a hip. If she goes to get up from an outside leg stand up, if she has a big gap between her elbow and her knee, the hook comes right in. It's easy. If not, and she does a good job of keeping a strong connection, She has a closed turtle on this side, which makes it hard for you to insert your hooks. But she also sacrifices her base. If she goes to get up with an outside leg stand-up, and she posts her hand out on the floor initially, now it's hard to knock her down to a hip because she has a post hand. But it's easy to insert a hook. So she has an open turtle here. So it's hard to knock her down to an unathletic position, but it's easy to insert my hook as she gets up. Whereas if she blocks the hook initially, now it's hard to insert my hook as she goes to get up. And if I try to insert my hook, then I just let her get up. So if I'm here and I make a mistake, as I try to insert my hook, it fails, and now my partner's gone. So you have to recognize this as your partner goes to stand up. Because she has a closed turtle here, it's hard to insert my hook, but it'll be incredibly easy to off-balance your partner. If she hasn't posted the left hand and she goes to get up, you just knock your partner down. Now you go into all the attacks we looked at before. The only way that she can stop this is to post the left hand out wide. Now your hook comes in. And now as she goes to build height, we immediately control posture with the power half, and we're ready to go. So countering an outside leg stand-up against a closed turtle on the near side and against an open turtle on the near side. If she's an open turtle on the near side, it's hard to knock her down to a hip, but easy to insert a hook. And if she's a closed turtle on the near side, it's hard to insert a hook, but incredibly easy to off-balance her with a pull of the hip towards you. All right, and last but not least, we're going to go into covering how we can defend and counter our partner standing up with an inside leg stand-up. Okay. Now, when my partner goes to go in with an inside leg stand-up, we're encountering different problems that we do with an outside leg stand-up. Okay. With an outside leg stand-up, it's much easier to insert our hooks on the near side and to off-balance our partner. The issue is when our partner goes into a near side leg stand-up, she grabs my wrist, for example, and she starts to go to stand up. Now I have no ability to insert a hook on this side, and I have no ability to really off-balance my partner because she has a post leg on the same side. So when I try to pull my partner down, when she goes to get up, she just stands up quickly, and now she's gone. Whenever I see my partner going for an inside leg stand-up, the onus is on you to be able to recognize this and switch sides. What we want is to run across to the far hip to attack an outside leg stand-up on the opposite side. So we're going to change positions. So right now she goes for an inside leg stand-up. The second she steps the leg up, I strip my hand backwards. As she goes to hold on tight, I strip out in the direction of the weakness of the one-on-one. And before she goes to get up, I step my right leg across, and now I move across, I post the hand, and I pull my partner down to a hip right away. Okay? So that as she goes to get up, she goes for an inside leg stand-up. I make sure that I don't try to insert my hook and play around here. I immediately recognize this, and I move from one side. My knee comes up, hand strips. I put my right knee down and across. As my left leg steps up, I knock my partner down to a hip, and now she's on a hip where she has the option of either turning towards me, staying here and going to a back head and arm with a seated head and arm, or going to get up into turtle position and giving me a hook. Okay? So whenever my partner goes for inside leg stand-ups, I make sure that I recognize this, and I immediately take a far step across my partner's body with my rear leg. I transfer. I strip the grip. Right leg comes down. So rear leg comes down. Lead leg comes up. We knock our partner down. Okay? And we play right from there. So again, incrementally fighting our way to inside, or to incrementally breaking our partner down to unathletic positions and fighting our hands and hooks to the inside. So she goes for an inside leg stand up right away. We're behind our partner. The second I see this, go ahead. And now we're ready to play right from there. Okay? So when our partner goes with an inside leg stand up, we move to the other side to make it into her outside leg stand up by switching from one side to the other. So it's her inside leg stand up, but we make it our outside leg stand up. Let's look at a recap of what we talked about today. When attacking from turtle position, you have to look at a few things. The first is your partner in an open turtle or closed turtle. Once you can start to think about turtle position as open versus closed, everything becomes much easier. When your partner plays with a closed turtle, it's much, much easier to off-balance your partner to either force them to open the turtle to go into your attacks, or to simply knock them down to a hip to unathletic positions where you can incrementally fight your hands and hooks to a position where we can go into finishes. When they're in a closed turtle, it's much harder to insert hands or hooks into place given the amount of time that you have before your partner rolls. So it's always the best option to be able to knock your partner down to a hip or at least off balance them to make them open the turtle. When your partner plays in an open turtle, it's much harder to knock them down to a hip because they have a bigger base of support, but it's much easier to start to insert hands or hooks depending on their defensive reactions. If we think about a turtle position, open turtle, as legs to a table, we're thinking about taking out bases of support and legs from our table, okay? Whether it's knocking our partner down straight over the hip, like so, where I take out one leg here, or knocking our partner down over the shoulder, taking out one leg here, okay? The second we can start to off balance our partner immediately to be able to insert hands or feet, everything becomes much easier, much easier. Some of the grips that we can use on our partner. We can use a variety of different grips. We can use single wrists, both near side and far side. We can use double wrists. We can use rear body locks. We can use rear chest locks. We can use a variation of claw grips. We can use a variation of backhand and arm grips. We can use reverse tight waist. We can go into frontward and rearward facing attacks. We looked at those as well. And we can use a lot of positions that are derived from wrestling, but much different than actual wrestling techniques, because we have the opportunity to expose our backs to the floor and to expose our opponent to submissions, okay? In addition, we have things like half Nelsons and power half Nelsons, which you see a lot in wrestling. Claw grips you see a lot in wrestling, as we talked about. And we use all of those today, right? A lot of things that you see in wrestling, but I don't really see too much in jiu-jitsu. And being able to exploit those moves, which translate very well from wrestling to our sport, is going to be a big key to your success. Power halves you don't really see at all in jiu-jitsu, and they're very important when looking to break your partner down from the turtle specifically, or control posture, or deal with very strong or athletic people. Another thing that we didn't focus on today, I'm going to get questions about this all the time, is where do you want your feet when you're playing a turtle position? Now, everyone tells you to never keep your feet in between your partner's two legs, okay? Now, is that a good rule for beginners? Yes, because your partner can roll into your legs and start to create issues. If I have my foot in between her two legs and no upper body grips, she can start to invert over her shoulder and roll through, and now she can enter into my legs and give me all kinds of trouble. I'm not going to say to put your foot in between your partner's two legs, but once you start to get to a high level, it doesn't really make too much of a difference. If I don't want my partner to attack my legs at all, then obviously I keep my foot to the outside of my partner's feet on either side. But there are great ways that we can attack our partner's back by baiting a shoulder roll with my foot to the inside. For example, if I have my foot in the middle of her 2 feet, and I want her to roll into my legs, as she goes to roll, I can bait a shoulder roll, so now as she goes to roll through, I lock a backhand and arm, and now I can expose my partner's back. So I know there's going to be a question that I was going to get that we didn't talk about. It's not very important where you place your foot. In general, you don't want to put your foot directly in between your partner's legs unless you're baiting them to roll into your legs, to bait a leg attack to take their back. But if you want to just keep your legs safe, always make sure that your foot isn't directly in between your partner's 2 feet. Okay. We also talked about different hip positions where we can either look to control our partner like so, with a leg behind our partner's hips, where we have the hip height advantage. We're now looking to control both our partner's upper body and lower body. Or we're looking at positions where we relinquish lower body control briefly to just go into crucifix attacks, where now we're looking to just control our partner's upper body for the time being. In addition to that, we looked at rearward facing attacks, where we use reverse tight waist grips. to switch our hip position to face towards our partner's hips, to look to expose our partner's ankles, and enter the cross-body ride attacks. And we went into a variety of transitions from cross-body ride. In general, what you have to be thinking about is just separating closed turtle and open turtle. If you can look at your partner and say, what turtle are they in? Are they in closed turtle? Just break them down to a hip, or attempt to. If they're an open turtle, just insert your hands and then play back and forth from there. Constantly off balancing people. If you watch jiu-jitsu guys, most people stay in turtle for long amounts of time. In wrestling, if someone gets broken down to a turtle position, they're constantly moving, constantly trying to go out and escape or stand up or go into some form of escape. It's unlikely that you're going to be training with anybody good, and they're going to just let you hold them in turtle position for minutes at a time. That's why it's very important to have constant kazushi, a constant off-balancing effect, so that no matter where your partner's going, they're constantly thinking about getting back to an athletic position to be able to start moving and going into their escapes. All right. And the second you can start thinking about it like this, everything is going to become much easier when you're going into attacks from there. And then we covered some of the main escapes and defensive movements that intelligent people will do. Obviously, that you can go much deeper into those rabbit holes. If you're doing a full escape video, there's much more defensive reactions where we transition to other moves, to arm bars, to triangles, to kimuras, and things like that. But that's getting a little bit off topic, but we'll do this in the future. Hopefully you guys enjoy it. Hopefully you guys kill everybody from turtle position and take everybody's backs, and all your training partners hate you.